joins us on the line from the Mother City now. Good afternoon, Lucy. Thank you for your time on the SABC News Desk this afternoon.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Lucy, are we dealing with a crisis in our country's child protection system, or is this being alarmist right now? Just give us a sense of the scale and magnitude of this problem.
A third of our children are sexually abused. A third of them are physically abused. Over 65% experience some kind of victimization. And that's across all ages. There's a baby rape every 3 days. It affects every family, every school, everyone in the community. No one's immune. I would call that a national crisis.
Lucy, those stats are indeed staggering and very disturbing. A child killed every 3 days. Now, within your study, you conducted what's called a tracking study, which looked at how reported cases of child abuse across 5 provinces are processed in the child protection system right now. What did that study reveal, Lucy?
Very shortly, it confirmed that we aren't taking children and child abuse seriously, and more importantly, we're not working together. The child protection system is supposed to do 3 things. It is supposed to make sure that children are safe. It is supposed to make sure that the family is given the support it needs to protect and care for the child, and we are supposed to help the child to recover through giving them counselling. At the moment, because the police, the health and social services aren't working together, it means that perpetrators are going free without facing justice. It means that families aren't getting support, and vitally, the children aren't getting therapy. Only 8% of cases did we see professionals working together.
Lucy, we know that violence doesn't necessarily equate, that poverty doesn't necessarily equate to violence. But it is true that in our poorer communities, for example, Diepsloot and Delft, which recently make headlines for violent crimes against minors, are also more susceptible to these sort of crimes. Can you just quickly talk to us about the inequitable access to health, education and social services in these areas, and talk to us about the link between poverty and the lack of social services and violence?
Okay, so the causes of violence are actually very complex. It's not just poverty on its own. Poor living conditions where people are living in overcrowded housing, mental health, substance abuse, all increases the chance of children experiencing violence, the availability of weapons in communities, exposure to crime, not only increase children's risk of being a victim of violence, but increase children's risk of perpetrating violence. So these things all come together, particularly in poorer communities. But no community is immune from this. It happens in all communities. It just so happens that it tends to be that in poorer communities, there's a greater concentration of those different risk factors. The other problem that we have is that services, particularly social services, under apartheid, social services were concentrated in white areas. The rural areas, the black communities didn't have access to those kind of services. And we feel an effect of that. If you map today where social services are, they're still concentrated in those formerly white areas that are now, the richer suburbs. And the poorer suburbs, which were formerly black areas, don't have the same access to resources. So it's a vicious circle where there's where there are fewer initiatives that have been invested to try and decrease violence, then, obviously we're seeing more violence, and violence breeds violence.
Lucy, I hear you. Violent crimes against children occur across the board in the country, regardless of race, economic status or background. But how do we begin to prioritize these areas, and how crucial is it that we begin to shift attitudes and priorities of policymakers into improving and expanding children's services, especially for the poorest and the most vulnerable in our society?
Look, it's not just about government services. We are all guilty. As I said, every family, every school, every community is touched by violence in some way. And we are all guilty of not taking action to stop it. Violence is a part of children's everyday lives. And we as individuals, your viewers and listeners out there, all need to say no. This is not just about people as professionals. This is about our communities collectively stopping turning a blind eye. It's about granny listening when a child says that she has experienced violence. It's about the police officer taking that case when a young boy says he's been beaten up by his father and not turning him away because he says it's justifiable discipline. We all have a responsibility to take. And the government did a review of the state of services, and one of the things that they found was that, yes, Department of Social Development is taking a lead, and next week as we go into Child Protection Week, you will see the Minister of Social Development out there in our communities addressing this issue. But this is a national crisis, and every minister should be joining her in making this a priority. It affects all, it's deeply entrenched in our communities, and to shift those attitudes, to shift what's happening in our homes and our daily lives requires a massive investment from government, not just social services, not just services that are specifically aimed at children. Antenatal clinics, we need to tell women what to look out for, how to care for their children as children grow.
Thank you, Lucy. I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there. We are out of time. That was Lucy Jamieson. She's a senior researcher with the Children's Institute at the University of Cape Town, joining us on the line from the Mother City. Time to